To some extent, I believe it's true that Israel gets untoward coverage because it's so easy to work there. The phones work. High-speed internet works. If you need a comment on a subject, you can make one phone call and a spokesman for the government will give you a cogent comment. NGOs are available, experts are available, universities are full of them, and everyone is free to talk and say whatever he thinks he should say, which is clearly not the case anywhere else in the region. That said, I think there are other reasons why Israel is so overemphasized. I'm not sure I know what they all are, but one thing is for sure. If I write another book, the chances are the title of the book will be "The Most Over-Covered Story in the History of Journalism." I can't explain why there's this obsession with Israel, and especially with Israel and the Palestinians. It used to be that people said that, well, if you solve the Israel-Palestinian conflict, then all the problems of the Middle East will go away. Most of us knew that was not true all through the ages of this saying. But Arab Spring, if we learned anything from Arab Spring, it's that it has no truth whatsoever.
You've been very critical of mainstream media's reporting during Operation Protective Edge. I'm hoping you can explain why.
I think there are some limitations and some presumptions that are made by reporters and news organizations. First of all, the assumption that Palestinians are victims and Israelis are aggressors doesn't seem to be altered by the fact that the victims fire 4,000 rockets at Israel. If you Google the term proportionality minus Israel, you'll find a bunch of academic articles. Maybe one or two of them will mention something about Afghanistan. Yet proportionality was a catchword during Western media coverage, as though because only a handful of Israelis were killed, therefore only a handful of Palestinians should have been killed. And of course, that's not the definition of proportionality whatsoever. It's silly. Israelis were charged with killing civilians, willy-nilly with no regard. It's a total nonsense. Everybody knows what extraordinary steps Israel took to warn civilians to get out of areas where an airstrike was coming, to the extent that, of course, Hamas fighters also could run away from there if they wanted to. And look at the numbers, if you will. And this was not done by anybody. 2,200 people, more or less, were killed in Gaza during a 6-week-long conflict with Israel that included 4,000 airstrikes by the Israeli Air Force and a ground operation to destroy a bunch of tunnels that were dug under the Israeli border by Hamas to try to infiltrate terrorists into Israel and kill civilians. Now, do the math. 4,000 airstrikes, 2,200 people killed. That's one person killed for every 2 airstrikes. Do you really believe that if Israel was intentionally trying to kill people in Gaza, that would have been the death toll? Give me a break. This was not reported. It's as though the victimhood of Palestinians is the story, and Israel defending itself is aggression. Add to that the more important element, I think, of the fact that reporters were not free to operate in Gaza the way they wanted to, or could have. Wanted to, I'm not going to give the value judgment. You saw no coverage from the scene of rockets being fired at Israel. You saw no pictures, you saw no video. Yet 4,000 rockets were fired. Where were these guys? Why weren't they doing their jobs? Pretty clearly, Hamas made it obvious to reporters that it would not be a good idea for the health if they took such pictures, and a couple of reporters later admitted that, yes, indeed, I knew if I took that picture they would kill me. So there's the intimidation, which, by the way, is not just in Gaza or the West Bank, it's all over the region. Reporters in every country in the region except for Israel are not free to do their jobs the way we think they are, because we tend to judge reports from the Middle East with the same standards wherever they're written. And I think we need to start looking at them a little more critically.